It was a cold February evening in 2015 when a man named Alex left work late from a grocery store in Ohio. The snow had started falling again, thick and heavy, and the streetlights gave off that quiet orange glow that makes the world feel smaller and emptier than it is. He took his usual shortcut home through a neighborhood with only a handful of occupied houses. Old homes with wide yards, long driveways, and too many dark windows. As he turned onto his street, something caught his eye. His headlights landed on a shape standing motionless at the end of his driveway. It was a girl, maybe 17, 18 years old, wearing a thin, faded hoodie, no coat, no shoes. Her jeans were soaked from the snow, and her hair stuck to her face like she'd been standing there for a long time. She faced his house, perfectly still, her arms at her sides, as if she were waiting for something inside. Alex slowed his car and rolled his window down halfway. "Hey, are you okay?" he called out. No response. The girl didn't move, didn't flinch, Her head tilted slightly, but she never looked at him. He tried again. "Do you need help?
Hello?
You shouldn't be out here." Still nothing. Just silence and falling snow. Feeling uneasy, Alex parked across the street, but didn't get out. Instead, he grabbed his phone and called 911, telling the operator there was a barefoot girl standing outside his home in freezing weather. Police arrived within 10 minutes. When they checked the driveway, the girl was gone. They searched the property, the backyard, even the woods behind the house. But there was no trace of her. The only thing they found were 2 sets of footprints, one set smaller, leading up the driveway, and another larger set beside it. Both stopped halfway up the porch and ended abruptly, as if the people just vanished mid-step. The officers told Alex it could have been a runaway or someone in distress and advised him to keep his doors locked. He tried to sleep that night, but something about her posture, her stillness, wouldn't leave his mind. The next morning, while checking his phone, he noticed a new alert from his doorbell camera. The timestamp read 11:47 p.m., the exact time he'd seen her. He pressed play. The footage showed the girl standing much closer to his door than before, right in front of the camera. Her face was pale, her mouth slightly open, lips moving as if whispering, but there was no sound. Behind her, in the far right corner of the frame, barely visible through the falling snow, was something else. A taller, darker figure, bent, hunched, just standing there. Alex sent the clip to police. They enhanced the image, and what they found made even the investigators pause. The second figure wasn't behind her. It was crouched over her shoulder, its hands appearing to rest on her back, almost guiding her toward the door. When the porch light suddenly flickered on, both figures disappeared from the frame. The police searched the area again, this time checking neighboring houses. No one had seen a girl matching that description. No missing person reports were filed. Nothing. Alex tried to convince himself it was a trick of the light, maybe camera distortion. But a week later, while checking his footage again, he noticed something else. Every night since then, around the same time, 11:47 p.m., the motion detector would trigger. Sometimes the lens would capture faint movement like a shadow gliding across the snow. Sometimes it only recorded static. And faintly in the background, almost too quiet to notice, there was the sound of whispering. He moved out 2 months later. The new owners didn't believe his story at first, But every winter since, around the same time, the door camera still goes off. The alert always reads the same. Motion detected at 11:47 p.m. When they play the footage, there's never anything visible, just a soft hiss of static. And underneath it, if you listen closely, a girl's voice whispering right next to the microphone. Don't let him in. In 2003, a single mother named Lisa Henderson moved into a small rental home in rural Kansas with her 8-year-old son, Aaron. The house was old and worn, but cheap enough to manage on her salary. It had a faded porch, creaky wooden floors, and thin walls that carried every sound. The first few weeks passed quietly. Then Aaron began mentioning something he called the voice. At first, Lisa assumed it was his imagination. He'd point toward the vent near the floor in his bedroom and whisper, "She's talking again." Lisa would kneel down, listen, and hear nothing, just the low hum of air through the ducts. But one night after Aaron had gone to sleep, she was walking past his room when she heard it herself. A soft, rhythmic humming coming from deep inside the vent. It wasn't the vibration of pipes or wind. It sounded unmistakably like a woman humming a lullaby. Lisa froze, listening. It continued for about 30 seconds before fading into silence. When she worked up the nerve to remove the vent cover and shine her phone's flashlight inside, there was nothing. Only dust, cobwebs, and darkness. The next morning, she called the landlord to report what she'd heard, suggesting maybe animals were trapped beneath the floor. The landlord said he'd send someone out to check, but never did. A few nights later, Aaron woke her up crying. He refused to sleep in his room, saying, "The lady is calling my name now." Lisa tried to reassure him, saying it was just the wind, but he kept insisting. That night, she stayed in his room, determined to show him everything was fine. Around 2:30 a.m., the humming started again. Soft, deliberate, almost like a tune. Lisa felt the air shift slightly through the vent, as if something was moving beneath them. Then, suddenly, the humming stopped, and a whisper replaced it. The words were faint but clear enough to understand. "Don't go." Lisa froze. The sound wasn't echoing through pipes. It was coming from directly below them, beneath the floorboards. She grabbed Aaron, ran outside into the freezing air, and called 911 from her car. Police arrived about 20 minutes later. They searched the crawl space beneath the house and discovered an area that had been crudely sealed off with boards and duct tape. Behind it was a narrow space about the size of a small closet. Inside lay a thin mattress, a tattered blanket, and an old cassette recorder sitting on the floor. The officer pressed play. The tape whirred, filling the air with a static hiss before the same soft humming emerged. Slow, steady, eerily familiar. Near the end of the tape, the humming stopped, replaced by the same whisper Lisa had heard hours earlier. "Don't go." Police traced the property records and discovered that the previous tenant had been a 27-year-old woman named Denise Wells, who'd rented the home in 1999 and vanished less than a year later. Her car had been found miles away, abandoned. Her case had gone cold for 4 years. Investigators believe Denise may have been held in that compartment possibly for weeks before she died. But there were no remains, no fingerprints, nothing conclusive. Just that mattress, the tape recorder, and a voice that shouldn't have been there. Lisa and Aaron never spent another night in the house. They moved in with family across town while the landlord sealed the crawl space permanently and tore up the floorboards above it. In the years since, tenants have come and gone. Some say the house feels colder than it should. Others claim that on humid nights, when the air is heavy and still, a faint melody drifts up through the floor vents. It starts as humming and ends in a whisper. Two words carried on the quiet air. Don't go. In 2012, a 45-year-old man named Tom Reese worked night security at a long-abandoned mall in Central Florida that was scheduled for demolition. The job was straightforward. Check each wing every hour, make sure no one had broken in, and log his patrols on a clipboard at the main desk. The building had been closed since 2008, and by the time Tom started, most of the power was gone. Only the emergency lights in the hallways still worked, flickering white tubes that buzzed faintly above the empty storefronts. Tom had worked security for years, and he'd seen plenty of strange things. Animals getting in, vandals, kids looking for a place to hang out. But North Point Mall felt different. He said it was too quiet, even for an empty building. When he walked the main concourse, his own footsteps echoed so loudly it sounded like someone was following just a few paces behind. Sometimes he'd stop to listen, and the sound would stop too. He mentioned this to his supervisor once, who laughed it off, saying it was probably just old vents or rats in the walls. Tom didn't argue. But over the next few weeks, things started happening that he couldn't explain. The lights in the old cinema wing would flicker on by themselves, even though that part of the mall was disconnected from power. The motion sensors near the food court would sometimes trip when no one was there. And one night the elevator in the East Corridor came down on its own, even though the controls had been disabled years ago. On the night of May 17th, Tom checked in as usual. His radio log shows consistent activity, routine sweeps, until 2:57 a.m. That's when he called the control office, saying, "I'm hearing footsteps down near the cinema. I think someone's in here." His supervisor started to respond, but the transmission cut off in static. Seconds later, another brief message came through. "I think someone's down here." After that, silence. When Tom didn't check out at 6 a.m., the morning guard went to look for him. His truck was still in the lot, his coffee still half full on the desk. Near the entrance to the old movie theater, they found his flashlight lying on the floor, still on. His radio was beside it, coated in dust, as if it had been there for weeks instead of hours. Police were called immediately. They combed through the entire property, but found no sign of Tom. All doors and exits were locked from the inside. No windows were broken, and there were no signs of a struggle. When they checked the mall's surveillance footage, they found something unusual. Around 2:58 a.m., one of the cameras in the cinema hallway shows Tom walking down the corridor, flashlight in hand. He stops halfway, looks over his shoulder, and appears to speak into his radio. Then he shines his light toward the far end of the hall, where a figure seems to move just out of the beam's reach. The footage glitches for exactly 7 seconds. When the feed returns, Tom is gone. The flashlight rolls across the tile floor and stops facing the camera. The timestamp shows 3 hours, 1 minute, and 11 seconds a.m. Investigators tried to recreate the malfunction, but couldn't. Every other camera worked perfectly that night. The glitch happened only on the one, face the cinema wing. The following week, The demolition crew arrived to start their work, but most refused to go near the theater section. They said their equipment would randomly shut off near the same hallway. One worker claimed he heard faint radio static echoing from the dark, even though the entire security system had been unplugged. A few days later, another worker found writing on the glass doors leading into the theater lobby. Scrawled through a layer of dust were 3 words: "Still doing rounds." Fingerprints didn't match anyone who had been on site. To this day, the mall remains abandoned. It was never demolished due to legal disputes. Locals who live near the property say the emergency lights still flicker on some nights between 3 and 3:15 a.m. Security logs from the old system, which was never fully shut down, continue to record motion activity in the same corridor labeled Zone 5. Each time the alarm goes off, it prints the same message on the monitor: Zone 5 movement detected. Security patrol in progress. In 2017, a nurse named Karen Mitchell was covering an overnight shift at a regional hospital in Oregon. Around 2 a.m., she received a call to check a patient in room 313. A quick vitals check, nothing unusual. The hallway was dim. When she reached the door, it was closed, the light faintly on inside. She knocked softly. A frail voice answered, "Come in." Inside, an elderly man lay quietly on the bed, hooked to oxygen. His voice was weak, but clear. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I didn't want to die alone." Karen sat beside him for a moment, comforted him, then stepped out to get the attending doctor. When she returned, less than 3 minutes later, the room was empty. The bed was stripped, the machines gone. She checked the computer log. Room 313 was listed as vacant, closed for renovations. There was no patient assigned there, no record, no equipment scheduled. Security pulled the hallway footage. Karen was clearly seen walking toward room 313 and stepping inside. But she didn't come back out. Not for almost 7 minutes. When she finally did, she looked pale and shaken. Frame by frame, security noticed a flicker as she entered the room, almost like another figure standing behind her for half a second before vanishing. Maintenance later confirmed that the entire 300 wing had no active power or oxygen lines at the time. There was no way anyone could have been in that room. Karen still works at the hospital but avoids that wing. She says she doesn't believe in ghosts, yet she never walks past room 313 alone. Renovations finished months later, and the wing reopened. But nurses still talk about the cold air that lingers outside that one room. Some say if you stand there late at night, you can hear it too. A soft whisper, barely audible over the hum of the lights. "Thank you for coming." The others didn't hear it. She never mentioned it again. To this day, she still works at that hospital, but she avoids that wing whenever she can. And every now and then, during late-night shifts, she swears she sees a light flicker on under the door of room 313, just for a moment, as if someone inside is waiting for another visitor. If these stories made your heart race, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for more true encounters like these. Because some stories aren't just meant to be told, they're meant to be remembered. Stay safe and never listen to these alone.